everybody. Welcome. Glad you're here to class today. Some of you are here with us virtually. Some of us are here physically. And so we're going to begin Exodus chapter 4 today. As a quick review, if you haven't done a study of Exodus, it's really pretty important to understanding kind of some of the stuff that happens later throughout the Bible. So we just came off of almost a year, I guess 9.5 months of doing Genesis. We went through Genesis chapter by chapter, verse by verse through there. And now we're going through Exodus. And the first thing that we come to in Exodus chapter 1, verse 7 is that let's see here, verse 8, sorry. Now there rose up a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. So this is the turning point, the pivotal turning point in the life of the Hebrew people in Egypt. They go from being very wealthy, very, very well-to-do, to basically the king, the Pharaoh as we call him, basically says, there's too many of them. We're going to have to suppress them and oppress them, enslave them, make it hard for them to multiply, etc. I think there was 1 million when they started. The Exodus numbers, as far as going out of Egypt, I'm hearing numbers between 1 and 3 million. Which, if it's 1 million, that's a lot. If it's 3 million, that's a lot. I mean,
either way, it had to be a lot.
A lot of people. Correct. Well, I mean, you think about cities in the U.S. with 1 million population, and there's really not that many. You have Houston Metroplex, and we've got 7 or 8, 9, if you add all the counties and everything, 7 or 8, 9 million in like the 9-county area. Dallas-Fort Worth has probably got somewhere in the 8 to 10 in the Dallas Metroplex there. Then they've got their smaller cities. If you add those into it, they're probably in the 10 to 12 million. Austin, if I'm not mistaken, last I heard, was somewhere in the like 5 to 6 million. San Antonio's in the 4, 5, 6, 7 million, somewhere in there. And then from there, you start getting down. It just starts dropping. You think about places like Omaha, Nebraska, or something, which is like, hey, that's a big city in Nebraska, but it's got like 500,000 or 400,000 or whatever it is, and that's big for them. But we're the orders of multitudes 10 times larger, 20 times larger than that. So, it's amazing when you start thinking about, we're, call it 3, 4, 5, 5th largest city in the United States here in Houston. There's a very quick drop off where all the cities start getting a lot smaller. So it's interesting.
Well, the cities like the city of Houston, we have a port.
That's true.
That makes a huge difference too.
Very true.
Hey, I watched some still the other day, or read something. Tom Ball, that's his name.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Ball. He's the one responsible for building the port of Houston.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that. I like that kind of stuff. I'll tell you about Barrett's Station later, over there in Crosby area. All right, so chapter 1 was kind of, hey, we're in trouble. There's a new Pharaoh. There's a new guy in charge. He's not real happy with us now. Chapter 2, Moses is born, but chapter 1 said, hey, throw all the Hebrew babies into the river, drown them, and Moses he's drawn up out of the water. Everyone's heard the Sunday school, right? Chapter 3, he's encountering this burning bush in the desert. And God, the Yahweh God, the Jehovah Yahweh God of the Hebrew people, says, I want you to go back. You escaped because you killed somebody and you were like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I want you to go back. And I want you to get the Hebrew people and lead them out. So here we are looking in chapter 4, and this is where God and Moses are going to start negotiating the terms of this agreement for him to take them out.
Have you ever thought about the timing, though? Because, so there's a new king in town, right? So what that means is there's no more favoritism for Moses.
Right.
Isn't it ironic? When his favoritism ends, favoritism comes from another direction. Because here comes God.
Well, there's actually a verse, and we'll look at it. There's actually a verse that talks about that specific thing. About, I say favoritism. I'm saying neither hatred nor favoritism because of this.
But think what Moses was feeling, though, because he was in Midian, right?
He's in Midian, yep.
Okay. He's running for his life because he killed that Egyptian. So think how lonely he feels. He came from a life of privilege.
Correct.
Now he's out in the desert.
Yep.
Nowhere to go. Don't know what he's going to do. Don't know where his first step is, and here comes God.
Yep. Well, and he knows that he's Hebrew because it says that he saw the Egyptian guy beating the Hebrew, his brother.
Yeah.
And so he was like, well, don't do that. And so we know that he knows he's Hebrew, but he wasn't like everybody else because he was in the palace, or at least in the daughter's area. So he's got a foot in both camps, so to speak. And so, yeah, he probably like, man, I'm pretty cush, I'm pretty comfortable, but man, I know I'm from these people, and they're getting waylaid out there. You know, let's jump into it because I got a whole bunch for us tonight. We'll start in Exodus chapter 4. I'm reading from the Modern English version. If you have the YouVersion Bible app, if you're reading from home, you can read in whatever version works for you. I don't play favoritisms as far as what you read. I just prefer to read the Modern English version. But follow along, and we'll begin tonight's study in Exodus chapter 4. And Moses answered and said, but they will not believe me, nor listen to my voice. For they will say, the Lord has not appeared to you. Now, if you see the Lord there in all caps, capital L, and then small, capital O, capital R, capital D, that's Yahweh, Jehovah, is what we're talking about there. Some translations will translate it to YHWH, that we talked about that last week, the Tetragrammaton. And some versions I've seen will actually put G dash or underscore D instead of writing out God. That's like the English version of Yahweh because they didn't include the vowel because they didn't feel holy enough to write the holy name, whatever, okay? So God, thank you for letting me say your name. I'm just going to say it here because it's in the scripture, so I'm just going to do it that way.
Remember when Prince came up with that symbol?
Yes. Yes.
That made me think of that. We got to call you something.
Yeah.
How are you going to know to come get your reward?
Yeah. Formerly known as.
Right.
So the Lord, Yahweh Jehovah there, see that? Same one, said to him, and by the way, the reason I make that distinction, the reason it's important in here, because it's not just saying any God, any sort of possible, idol or God, like kind of a lowercase g, it's saying specifically Yahweh Jehovah God. When it's in that.
They needed to say that because they came from a pagan.
Correct.
Egyptians was pagan.
Yeah.
There was a God for everything.
Next week, we're going to talk about their gods because we're going to go through the plagues. We're going to talk about their gods and how. Yep, we're going to talk about that. So, yeah, that's important that we're talking about the fact that it is this specific Yahweh Jehovah God. So the Lord said to him, what's that in your hand? It's a rod. Okay. So a shepherd's crook or a shepherd's staff. And he said, throw it on the ground. And he threw it on the ground. And it became a serpent. Then Moses fled from it. I'm going to guess this guy didn't like snakes because he throws this thing down, it becomes a snake, and he goes taking off running. I see the humor when I'm reading the Bible. I see there's little funny things in there.
Well, vipers were really bad back
then. Yeah. Well, and we see Moses later with the golden snake, the golden serpent that he's going to, or the bronze serpent, sorry. We'll talk about that as we go through the desert later. So he threw it on the ground, and it became a serpent. And then Moses fled from it. He ran away. Then the Lord said to Moses, put forth your hand and take it by the tail. And he put forth his hand, and he caught it, and it became a rod again in his hand. This activity is so that they may believe, the Hebrews back in Egypt and the Egyptians, that they may believe that the Lord, Jehovah Yahweh, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to you. So he's saying, you're not just going to go in there and say, hey, everybody, come on, follow me, let's go. I'm actually giving you, there's something here. And one of the reasons that he uses a serpent here, I believe, is because if you've ever seen, King Tutankhamun or any of the hieroglyphs, they've got the little snake or viper or cobra on the hood, on the front of their deal. And that's to symbolize their power, that they could kill you whenever, because they're the great being, okay? So he's saying, you're taking a lowly shepherd's crook, a lowly shepherd's staff, and you're going to turn it into what they think is this great, powerful symbol for their people, and then you're going to pick it up again. So it's basically kind of an affront to his symbol of power, and you're going to show your symbol of power, but your symbol of power is going to be something that's very humble and meek, which is a shepherd's staff. So keep that in your mind. We're going to come back to it. He fled from it, come out, tell him his staff again. This is the symbol I'm going to give to you. Verse 6. The Lord said furthermore to him, now put your hand into your bosom. So he basically says, pull a Napoleon Bonaparte, right? Put your hand into your robes. Put it on your chest. And he put his hand into his bosom. And when he took it out, his hand was as leprous as snow. And the word here is leprosy in the original language, but it's not meant to be like specifically, I can't remember if it's like Allen's disease or whatever we consider leprosy today. That Hansen's disease. I'm sorry. Yes, Hansen's disease. Yes, I'm not a medical guy. Hansen's disease, which is also carried by like armadillos and stuff like that. They're not specifically talking about that strain of whatever bacteria virus that is.
Have you got into that study yet of just leprosy? Here's what happens, because I got into this study 2 years ago.
Yeah, let me hear it.
It takes you into poverty.
Oh, wow.
It's associated with poverty, like the third world countries. Because we don't have it over here.
Correct.
Because we're cleaner, we know sanitation.
Right.
Stuff. So anyway, when you
very interesting.
study, it will take you into poverty.
Okay.
So get ready.
Very interesting. Okay. So this word is not, it doesn't mean the exact form of leprosy, Hansen's disease. It specifically means any sort of skin condition. Psoriasis, boils, vitiligo, what's the other one that's an ego that when you get infected and it begins to spread infection? Huh? Scabies is one of them. Hives. It's any sort of, and it actually goes into numbers. He goes into if you got something on your skin, you're going to be put aside for 7 days, and you come back before the priest, and he's going to look at you. If it's no worse off, then you're going to go for another 7 days, and you come back. If it's no worse off or it's healed, then you're good to go. But if you come back 7 days and it's spreading or it's gotten worse, then we're going to do 7 days, and then if it's getting worse or stayed the same, like next level down or worse, then we're going to do some other things. They'll quarantine, yeah. So anyway, this is the generic. When they say leprosy here in this particular context, in this Exodus book, when they're talking about leprosy, that what they're referring to is any sort of skin disorder that is likely to be communicable or otherwise dangerous for people to have. All right. So he puts his hand into his, Napoleon Bonaparte's, and he pulls it out, and it's white with snow. So I don't know exactly which skin disease. Leprosy doesn't typically show off as white, from what I understand, but it's showing that something definitely happened to his hand. Okay. So then the Lord said, furthermore, I'm sorry. Yeah. Put your hand in your bosom, take it out, it's white as snow. He said, put your hand into your robes again, into your bosom, in your chest. And so he put his hand into his bosom again and brought it out of his bosom, and it was restored like his other flesh. So what normally would be what did I just say, like a 14-day process of quote-unquote healing that the body can do if it's not a major chronic sickness or skin disease, God has done that in a matter of seconds. And so he's proven that he has the ability to heal. So he has the power from the staff and the viper, right? And he has the healing that's needed to make sure that we are whole. So he said, take it out like the other flesh. Verse 8, if they will not believe you, nor listen to your voice of the first sign, then may they believe the voice of the latter sign. So if they don't believe you from the snake to the shepherd's rod, then boom, here's this one. Show them that your hand can really kind of do this transformation thing. It's like a magic trick for the kids almost. Like, check it out. Look what I can do. Look what God, is doing with me. Here, boom, boom, boom. But, verse 9, if they will not believe also these two signs, or listen to your voice, then you shall take water from the river. Now, which river are we talking about? The Nile. So this is not a generic trick or a generic sign.
And you know what, too? They had their own sorcerers back then.
Correct.
So those kind of tricks wouldn't just like they've never seen before.
Right.
They've seen sorcery before.
Correct. And Pharaoh's, we're going to talk about that because Pharaoh's guys do that when we get into chapter 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. But this sign here is a geographical one.
For the water.
The water, because he says from the Nile River. You're going to take water from the river and pour it onto dry land, and the water which you take out of the river will become blood on the dry land. So if he was to go and do this in the Persian Gulf, it's not going to happen. If he does this in the Jordan River, it's not going to happen. It's in the Nile River. There's something that God has foreordained to happen in the Nile River. So we see power, and we see healing, and we see God's wrath and judgment geographically located in the Nile River. Are you following along with me here? Okay.
Would we call that a theophany?
I have even a deeper theophany here in a second because we're actually gonna look and see what happens with Moses and his wife. So verse 10, Moses said to the Lord, "O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither before nor since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and of a slow tongue." Now, there's two major academic thoughts, academic forks of what might he be talking about here. One is, does he have a speech impediment? Is he a stutterer? Is he a...
I was raised, taught that by Baptist preachers. But looking at it, it could just be he's not used to the language.
Correct. So this is, that's the two forks. So one is, does he have a problem? Is he a stutterer? Is he tongue-tied? Does he have a soft palate issue, or is there something physical going on with his speech, or is it a mental thing where he stutters, or he has?
Does it say slow speech? What does it say?
It says, "I am slow of speech and of a slow tongue." Now, the word tongue there has two meanings, and that's why I really think there's two possible options, and they could be the same.
If you're trying to speak German,
I'm going to be speaking it slow.
That's going to be slow.
I'm going to be speaking because it's not my first language. Now, remember, his mom, we go all the way back to chapter 2, his mom was raising him in a home that was Hebrew, and he knew he was Hebrew, but when he was old enough, and I was hypothesizing that it was probably 4 to 12 years old, somewhere in that range, where he could wipe his own bottom and take care of his own food and pack his own school lunch or whatever, because the princess, Pharaoh's daughter, specifically said, go and nurse him. So there was a time period. It wasn't just like go home and get his goods and bring them back. Like, there was a time period where he was raised there. So his first language was going to be Hebrew.
See, I would have thought it would be Egyptian.
His first language would be, well, I'm hypothesizing, okay?
No, I'm not disagreeing.
I'm hypothesizing. I think that they were still speaking Hebrew there, and the reason I say that is because when you look back at Joseph, remember the conversation with Joseph? When they came, he was speaking through a translator, even though he could understand his brothers. He was speaking through a translator, that he would speak Egyptian to the translator, and the translator would speak Egyptian to his brothers, but he was hearing the responses, and he knew it. But he was basically testing them to see what was happening there.
Is the Egyptian language today, is it still the same as it was then?
It's modernized, just like we went from Old English to New English to Modern English or whatever.
Before that was Latin. Because English is a derivative of Latin. No, it does change culture. So
yeah. I wouldn't say it was exactly the same, but you could probably understand more or less what they're saying. So that's why I'm saying Hebrew is still there, because when that family came, they weren't speaking Egyptian, but they came. Remember, there was 136 of them, I think it was, and they settled in Goshen. So you started with 136 people, all Hebrew, speaking Hebrew language, and it says that they multiplied across there. So I'm saying they're all speaking Hebrew in that part of Egypt, and that's why I hypothesize. I could be wrong.
Yeah,
I could definitely be wrong, but I think those are my basis points of why I'm posing what I'm saying there. So he's saying, I have a speech impediment, or I'm tongue-tied, or I've got whatever, Or I was a Hebrew speaker and I had to learn Egyptian at the princess's house, and I'm just not that good at Egyptian. It's just, I do it, but it's not very good. And if that's the case, you know,
Well, plus two, he's probably nervous. He's going back to where they want to kill him.
correct. Correct. And so I think here, the basic premise, if you'll notice here in verse 10, he goes, neither before this interaction here or since this interaction have, that since you've spoken to your servant, nothing's changed. I'm still slow to speak. Like he's basically saying, you're saying you're going to send me on this big mission, but I am not. I don't think I've been equipped. I'm still the stutterer, or I'm still not good at Egyptian. Or maybe he's a little bit of both. Maybe he's basically saying, I stutter sometimes, and Egyptian was my second language. I just don't feel comfortable.
He's questioning himself.
He's questioning himself. But what do we know about God? We know that God doesn't call the qualified, because that would build up to their ego and their pride. He qualifies those whom he calls. I'm going to say that again. He doesn't call those who are of high regard and standard. He calls the lowly and qualifies them up so that he can be glorified. Okay? That's what we see here. Verse 11, I'm in Exodus 4:11. The Lord said to him, who has made man's mouth? I think this is a pretty smart remark from God. You see, Moses is trying to be, he's trying to be avoiding the situation. I don't know about this. I'm not really good. And God's like, oh, well, you're exactly right, except for who made your mouth?
Yeah.
Or who made the dumb, or the deaf, or the seeing, or the blind? Have not I, the Lord? So he basically just burned Moses right there. Like, listen, I'm the one who's in charge of this. Your little speech deal, I'm not worried about that. I don't care. I'm the one who makes this, the ones who speak and don't speak, and hear and don't hear, see and don't see.
God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
That's right. So it's basically like, Moses, shut up and listen to what I'm telling you to do. So verse 12, now therefore, so God didn't even give him a chance to respond there. He says, who, what, hello, what? Okay, now that I just burned you, now therefore go.
But God's like, are you done?
Yeah. Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you must say. See, a lot of times I hear people talking about the fact, well, I'm a new believer, I'm not super strong, or I don't know the scriptures as well as you do, or you don't know where I came from. I'm not worthy of doing this. I mean, here we see God calling a murderer to come do his work, and a stutterer to come do his work. If God can heal the blind person, do you not think that he can make the person he calls able to speak what he wants? And that's exactly what he says right here. He goes, verse 12, you go. I will be with your mouth and teach you what you must say. It ain't going to be about you. It ain't going to be about how well you speak. It's not going to be about how awesome you are. It's not going to be about how amazing your ability to understand the scriptures are. It's going to be that you have been given the word and God is going to speak through you. Okay? So, that's good stuff. I mean, really. Exodus, I'm telling you, Exodus lays it, Genesis and Exodus together lay out the entire rest of the Bible. Okay? That's why I love studying it. So, verse 13. And so Moses here, he's got a response now. I mean, this guy he's the Old Testament Peter. He can't keep his foot out of his mouth. Okay? He says, oh, my Lord, send me, I pray, by the hand of whomever else you will send. So what did he just say? Can you very, very, very eloquently, so for someone who's pretty tongue-tied, he should put together an eloquent sentence to say, send somebody else. Then verse 14, I think this is an understanding of the relationship of us with God, because it says, the anger of the Lord was inflamed against Moses. He's like, okay, you're really starting to push the buttons now here. You're not understanding. Yes. He's stubborn. I mean, so he's a stutterer. He's a murderer.
So maybe
He's stubborn.
Yeah. Maybe he wouldn't have stuttered. I'm starting to think he wasn't. He was just making excuses.
I think he was making excuses. I think he is the least likely candidate that God would send for this situation, but he's the perfect one to send because he's the least likely one. So the anger of the Lord was inflamed against Moses, and he said, I can see him going, okay, all right, Moses, all right, fine. You know what? Is not Aaron the Levite your brother? I know that he can speak well, and also he comes out to meet you. And when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. And you shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be your mouth, and with his mouth, and with his mouth, and will teach you what you must do. What's more, he will be your spokesman to the people, and he will be as a mouth for you, and you will be as God to him. And of course, I'm God to you. Okay. You must take this rod in your hand with which you will perform the signs. So God is saying, okay, Moses. Okay, here we go. Moses, you got a brother. Like he's like, you're not getting this. You're not getting out of this situation. You're not getting off this assignment. Here's what I'm going to do. Your brother Aaron, and he's a Levite too. Okay. He speaks plenty well. Yeah, we're raised in the same house, so not sure how you're so messed up in your speech and he's so good in his speech, but whatever. Brothers have strengths and weaknesses. You're not going to be exactly the same. So I'm going to speak to you, and you'll act like basically a representative of God, and he's going to be the mouthpiece. Can we play this game? Can we do this now? Are we ready? Let me look at the end. He goes, you must take this rod in your hand and go. Get out of here. Get on down the road. Okay? So that's verse 17. Let's go to verse 18. So Moses went and returned, because remember he was on the mountain across the desert. There's maps. If you're interested, here I'll put this on here while I'm doing this. For those of you that are maybe watching, you can also go to the website. It'll also be on the end of the video, so you can also see it. But I am posting these videos and all of my maps, and I have maps and pictures and archaeological evidence and videos that relate to all this stuff. And it's all at bradflock.com/Exodus. Okay? So if you're watching this, you're already here on this site. So figure it out. Okay? So Moses went and returned to Jethro. He came back across the desert from the mountain to his father at Albab, I believe, or Albad. And he says, please let me go and return to my brothers who are in Egypt and see whether they be yet alive. Other translations are a little bit different, but basically he's saying, let's see who's still alive over there. Okay? Now that sounds like a plausible excuse. Why do you think that he didn't say, hey, father-in-law, God just met me on this mountain and he wants me to go and release all the Hebrews out of Egypt? Why do you think he didn't walk in there and tell his father-in-law that?
Probably really loud.
You've been in the sun too long, son. I'm not sure this is, you're not thinking straight, all right? And number two, don't you remember you came to me because you were running away? Because you killed the Egyptian guy? And you're going to go, why are you, no, you're not going there. I'm not going to have my daughter become a widow because you decide you want to go see if your brother's alive, okay? And brother there is a generic, like my Hebrews. It's not talking about, it can specifically be brothers, but it meant to be, how's my people doing back there, okay? So Jethro, however, because of the way he worded it, Jethro said to Moses, go in peace. Okay? Verse 19. The Lord said to Moses in Midian, go return to Egypt, for all the men are dead who sought your life. That's what I was talking about earlier. God specifically says, hey, we're good to go. We got a green light. There's nobody back there that's hunting you down. Okay? A new Pharaoh. And I put that under chapter 2, I believe, on the website. There was a transition of kings or pharaohs, and there was one who was there whenever Moses was there, and then there's another one who's now in charge. They're still doing the same basic campaign, but the one who was basically trying to hunt Moses down, he's gone. Okay? So there's a new Pharaoh, a new king, and the other people are gone. So, verse 20, Moses took his wife and his sons and set them on a donkey, and he returned to the land of Egypt. And Moses took the rod of God in his hand. So finally, we see Moses taking steps towards obedience towards God. The Lord said to Moses, verse 21, when you go to return into Egypt, see that you do all those wonders before Pharaoh, which I have put in your hand. But I will harden his heart, so that he shall not let the people go. So, real quick here, I have, for a long time, and I still don't have a 100% grasp on what's happening here, but I want to do a word study with you guys real quick. The word harden, I will harden his heart. What does it say in yours? Does it say something differently?
It says, but I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go.
Yeah, we're 21. 4:21.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
I will harden his heart. So I thought to myself, harden his heart. Like this is a hard thing to understand. Like think about that for a second. God is going to harden someone's heart. So it's to serve a purpose, but I did a word study here, and as of last week, I brought this back again. This is my Strong's Concordance. It's not perfect, but it's a good resource. And the word there is in the Strong's Concordance, number 2388, and it is Chazaq. It's pronounced Kazakh. And I'm going to read to you some of the notes. It's one of the longer definitions in there's a lot of words. It's like this means revelation, this means to see, this means whatever. This one has over a column and a half, almost 2 columns worth of notes on it. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I think it's important to get a better idea as to what we're talking about here. That's number 2388 and the Strong's. So, for example, to be strong, to seize, courageous, obstinate, to bind, restrain, conquer, prevail, encourage, take, or hold, to be made stronger. It's a verb, and it means to be strong or strengthen, harden, take hold of. And it first appears in Genesis 41:56, and the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. Remember we talked about Joseph, how the famine was getting worse and worse, and that his brothers were going to have to go back. Remember they left the brother in jail? They left the brother in jail, and Jacob was like, hey, y'all need to go back and get some more food because the famine's getting really bad here. It's getting stronger. It's deepening in its strength. And so think through, right? So Pharaoh was responsible for his hard heart. And 4 times we read Pharaoh's heart was hardened. He hardened it. In Exodus 9:34, which we're not there yet, Pharaoh's responsibility is made clear by that statement. He sinned yet more and hardened his heart. So we have this idea that it's not just hardened as in I'm rejecting God. It's I am flexing my muscles. Chris, Big Chris, as I call you, you are a bodybuilder, and you've got lots of friends, and y'all are. What are you doing when you're working out?
Bonding.
And eating lots of small meals together. But what are you doing when you're working out? You're flexing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what's the flexing supposed to do?
Well, it's supposed to build the muscle.
It builds the muscle up. And this is the same idea here. It's hardening. I'm flexing my muscles. I'm showing off that I've got, I'm flexing my little muscles now, but it's meant to be, I am hardening my heart. I'm standing firm on what I'm saying. I'm bowing up. Is that making any more sense? Is that a little clearer than just harden my heart? It's more than that. It's I am bowing up.
Yeah.
So that means that Pharaoh owns the action of the bowing by the activity or words that God is giving to him.
It also shows that God owns Pharaoh.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
He's eliciting a reaction, right? So let's go back into verse 21 there. But I, God, will harden his heart. I will bow up. I will strengthen his heart so that he will not let the people go. And you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, Israel is my son, even my firstborn. Now, I want you to think about this for a second. He has made this covenant with Abraham. He's reconvened it with Isaac. He's reconvened it with Jacob. And he has introduced himself once again through Moses. And he is saying, go tell Pharaoh, Israel and his descendants, because he renamed Jacob Israel. Israel and his descendants, that's my firstborn. These are my people. Verse 23, so I say to you, let my son go that he may serve me, worship me. There's also another translation there. And if you refuse to let him go, I will slay your son, even your firstborn. So here we have God saying, I am God, I'm the Father. The people of Israel are the firstborn of my people. That's my son, my lineage. Let them go so they can come worship me. If not, I'm taking your firstborn. So we have some good foreshadowing yet again. Same thing, we had some foreshadowing in chapter 3 as well. So let's go to verse 24 now. This is where it starts getting interesting. Remember, let me recap real fast. We have Moses, Hebrew, raised by Egyptian, killed an Egyptian, chased away, married a distant relative, another seed of Abraham, through the line of Midian, and is Zipporah, but the father-in-law was a priest, likely not of God, of idols. And we see the God Yahweh Jehovah, the God of the Israelites, the God of Hebrews, interacting with Moses and saying, hey, I'm calling you for a special purpose. Quit your whining. Let's go get this thing done. And so he begins to make his journey. That's where we are. Verse 24, and if you're following along here, get to verse 24. This is really cool stuff. At a lodging place on the way. Now, I'm going to draw this. If you're on the website, you'll see it, but basically you've got the Mediterranean Sea, and you've got the Nile River Delta, and we have here the Red Sea, and then the Sinai Peninsula, and then the Gulf of Aqaba, basically, the Dead Sea, Jordan River, Sea of Galilee. Kind of get an idea where we are. Midian is over here. So he's got to make this journey all the way over here to the northeast corner into Goshen, as we call it. So somewhere on this journey, verse 24, at a lodging place, somewhere on the journey, on the way, the Lord Jehovah Yahweh met him and sought to kill him. Whoa! Pause the tape. Or pause the digital recording, because I don't do tapes anymore. We just talked about all these things leading up to Moses is on an adventure going across the desert. He's going all the way back to Egypt. He's going to work for God, setting the people free. And we see here in verse 24, the Lord met him on the way and wants to kill him. What's going on? What's happening? Verse 25. This is like we're going to have to be like CSI together. Okay, we're going to have to figure out the clues. Verse 25. Zipporah, his wife, took a sharp stone, likely a flint, and cut off the foreskin of her son and threw it at Moses' feet and said, surely a bloody husband are you to me. So God, he, the capital H there, he let him go, let Moses go. And she said, a bloody husband you are because of the circumcision. So what happened? Moses was likely already circumcised 8 days in, because remember, he was 3 months old, I believe, whenever he was put into the basket from the scriptures. So when the princess, the Egyptian princess, picks him up and he's crying, he's wrapped in the Hebrew colors or whatever, Hebrew-style blankets and stuff. And she's like, oh, it's a boy. Oh, and he's Hebrew. It's pretty clear.
Wait, was he circumcised then?
Yeah.
Well, they had to get that hidden too then. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Because that had to be hidden.
Yeah. So we've got Moses is circumcised. And here we see that that's the symbol of God's covenant with the Hebrews. And here he is going marching through the desert, from Midian over to Goshen, the northeast corner of the Delta. And God seems to want to kill him because he didn't circumcise his firstborn son. Or it didn't even say firstborn, it just says skin of the son, foreskin of the son.
Does this mention anything about the time frame? You said the baby was 3 months old?
Moses was 3 months old whenever he put in the basket.
First.
So the son was born back over here in chapter 2. Yeah, so he's years old at this point. Yeah. Chapter 2, verse 22. Verse 22. Zipporah gave birth to a son and called his name Gershom, for he said, I have been a sojourner in the foreign land. And in the passing of time, the king of Egypt died, etc., etc. And they had another son. I can't remember where it is, but they have another son in there. So he's past the 8 days. So he should have been circumcised, but he wasn't. Now, I will say this: the timing, it was not. It wasn't like they didn't have the Pentateuch, the 5 books of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, to say, oh, we need to go 8 days in and circumcise our boy. It had to be passed down from parent to child. So we see Moses has been circumcised, but we see that he has not followed through with that covenant. God is still calling him, but he's not following through. So God was basically like, are you kidding me? Dude, you're going on this big journey with me here. Why are you not following through with the commands to display this covenant with your child? Like, you're going to go and tell Pharaoh to let the people go, and you're not even doing the things that you need to be doing. Okay? So Zipporah likely, okay, from what the studies that I read up on in preparing for this, there's 2 ideas. One is Zipporah, and they kind of are interconnected. Zipporah or Jethro, the father-in-law, they didn't practice that. They didn't practice that covenant there of circumcision. And so they were basically like, why are we going to cut the foreskin off? Like, who cares? Like, the kid's fine, leave him alone. But Moses apparently was coming through that lineage where it did. It was. And the fact that he didn't do it when he knew better because he didn't want to upset either his wife or his father-in-law or both. This is why she says, you are a bloody husband to me. A bloody husband you are because of the circumcision.
See, I think that they've already been arguing about it.
Yes.
So it's already had to have been a rift in the relationship.
Yep.
She's like, okay, you want it? Here it is.
Yeah.
It's already talking about it.
Exactly.
Shut up. So there's already been some arguing going on.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
Bingo. Yeah. So we kind of had to do some CSI sleuthing there to uncover that. We're kind of getting a little bit of some pillow talk from Zipporah and Moses here.
Yeah.
Laying in bed, hey babe, I know I've asked you this before. Can we circumcise Gershom? I mean, it's just something my family does, and we need to do.
We don't know the son's name, do we?
Yeah, chapter 1, verse 22 is Gershom.
Okay.
Yeah. And so she's like, what? No, get out of here. You're weird. Why do y'all do that? No, we're not doing that. Get out of here, man. So I can see them kind of having this interaction. All right, let's not argue about it. Just go to bed, whatever. But it came to the point where God said that he was going to try to kill Moses, and Zipporah somehow recognizes what's happening. Maybe God was actually talking with her as well. Saying, Zipporah, I know you don't quite understand this, but this is what needs to happen. Because if you'll notice, it says, she took the sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son and threw it at his feet. Where are they? Verse 24, where are they?
They're on the way, on the journey.
But what's it say in the very first words of 24? A lodging place. I think Moses was actually asleep. and that God was bringing Zipporah into the loop. I think he was saying, Zipporah, I know you don't understand this. Moses is bringing you across the desert, going to Egypt. And you're like, what in the heck's happening? Okay, I'll follow you, babe, whatever. But I think what we're seeing here is God saying, he's asleep. I'm going to deal with Zipporah. I'm going to get her on board.
Yeah, that's good.
That's what I'm seeing. Okay? Again, you guys know me. I could be wrong. I definitely could be way out here. But we don't see her asking any more questions. She is on board. She doesn't say, oh, if you go in there, Pharaoh's going to, oh, babe, don't do this. No, we don't see her arguing anymore after this. There's an interaction where she comes to what I believe is true faith in Jehovah Yahweh God in this lodging place. And it's God's time with her. And she is the one who does the circumcision for her son. Yeah. That's what I see. Again, I could be wrong, but I would love to hear your side of it if you have something different than that. Okay? Verse 27 now. Now the Lord said to Aaron. So now we've got the brother involved. Here, you see what he's doing? He's like, come on, you. Okay, you're good to go. You, come on. Okay, Aaron, come on. Right? You see him? He's gathering his team up. He's like, Avengers assemble, or whatever. Okay? He said to Aaron, go into the wilderness to meet Moses. So he went and met him at the Mount of God. So this is what I want you to see here in my Bible is, it says up here, it says, is not Aaron the Levite your brother? I know that he can speak well, and also he comes out to meet you. Because he was at the mountain of God. Moses was. So that's all the way back in verse 14. I think this is a continuation of that story, and then I think this is a flashback. I think this is a flashback in verse 27. Because Aaron says, God says to Aaron, go into the wilderness, the desert, to meet Moses. So he went and met him at the Mount of God. So while God's interacting with Moses and Moses is giving all these excuses, you almost see God saying, because he's omniscient, he's everywhere, and he's omnipotent and omniscient, right? And omnipresent. And so at the same time he's doing this with this negotiation and rolling his eyes at Moses for making excuses, he's saying, Aaron, come on over here. Yeah, come on. All right, look, and your brother, he's on his way. He is in control of the entire situation. So he went and met him at the Mount of God and kissed him. And Moses told Aaron all the words the Lord had sent him and all the signs which he had commanded him. And Moses and Aaron, so that was the flashback. Okay. Now here we are back arriving in Egypt. Moses and Aaron went and gathered together all the elders of the children of Israel. And Aaron spoke all the words the Lord had spoken to Moses and did the signs in the sight of the people. So this is the elders. They have a hierarchy or whatever, just like we have. These are the kind of leaders that we look to for answers. And so the elders, Aaron's talking to them. Moses is doing his, Napoleon Bonaparte and the stick and the snake and all the stuff. They're putting on a dog and pony show, saying, God sent us. Look at these things. Look at verse 31. This is a key passage here. Exodus 4:31. And the people believed. And when they heard that the Lord, Jehovah Yahweh, had visited the children of Israel, and that he had looked on their affliction, they bowed down and worshipped. What do we see right here? Boom! All these things are happening. Moses is now in correct alignment. Zipporah is now in correct alignment. Aaron's doing what he's called to do. They go and they speak, and they're saying what God told them to say, and they're giving the signs that they're supposed to give, and the people believed. This is another reason why I say way back here in chapter 1 that, let's see here. In chapter 1, let's see here. Chapter 2, verse 23. I'm going to go back to there real fast. Chapter 2, verse 23. In the passing of time, the king of Egypt died, and the children of Israel sighed. Because of their bondage, and they cried out, and their cry came up to God. It didn't say they cried to God. Their cries just made their way into the atmosphere and made it to God. And on account of the bondage. And God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant. Right? So we see here it says in verse 31, go to chapter 4, verse 31, and when they heard that the Lord had visited the children of Israel and that he had looked on their affliction, they bowed down and worshipped. I don't think that they were crying out to Jehovah Yahweh back here. I think they were just moaning and groaning. They were whining in their current situation, which was a terrible place to be. But God heard it, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and he said, time to spring into action. The time is now. 400-something years now. It's time to make this change. Let's do this thing. Moses, you're up. Zipporah, we're going to take care of you on the way. Aaron, let's go. Let's do this thing. And the people believed. I mean, this is, all in all, has Moses' stuttering been a problem? Has his inability to speak Egyptian very well been a problem to this point? Nope. Has his stick turned into a worm instead of a snake? I mean, everything's going according to plan. Okay? Everything's going great. So, now we're going into chapter 5. So let me change this because I want us to now go into chapter 5. And again, I've got artwork, pictures, maps, all sorts of stuff on bradflack.com/Exodus.
Who did the website?
Me?
Did it?
Yeah. It's just WordPress.
I need to check it out.
Yeah. So
See if I approve.
I hope you do. But I'm okay if you don't.
You'll live.
I'll live. So here we go into chapter 5 now. After what? After the people believed, right? The elders believed here. Moses and Aaron went in and said to Pharaoh, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness." Now, the word feast to me, I think, is probably a poor translation. That word actually goes in Strong's, when you look it up, it actually means make a pilgrimage.
Mine says hold a festival.
Hold a festival, a pilgrimage, a feast, something. They're going to go and worship. That's the basic premise, right? So, let my people go, that they may hold a feast or have a festival or pilgrimage to me in the wilderness. And the wilderness there literally means a place where there's no inhabitants. And when you're in eastern Egypt and you're coming from Midian, where's wilderness? It's desert. Okay? Sometimes you'll see it translated as desert, but the word's wilderness. It just means an unsettled place. Verse 2, chapter 5. Pharaoh said, "Who is this Yahweh?" It's not just who is this God, but who is this Yahweh that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, nor will I let Israel go. So, what did we see back here in chapter 4, verse 21? It says, "See that you do all the wonders before Pharaoh, which I put in your hand, but I will flex, make hard, bow up to his heart." Okay, his heart will bow up to God. I don't know who this Yahweh is, and frankly, I don't care. I'm not letting the Israelites go. That's his response. Verse 3. And they said, "The God of the Hebrews has met with us. Let us go, we pray you, 3 days' journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God, lest he fall upon us with pestilence or with the sword." Now, if you'll note, that last little phrase, "lest he fall upon us with pestilence or with the sword," did God say that? I don't remember him saying that. And did they say that the first time around?
I don't think so.
No. So, something's off here.
Maybe they're adding to it.
I think they were adding to it.
Trying to just make it sound more, what do you call it? Flamboyant.
They were, I think they were setting up a possible bluff. I mean, think about it. Now, we talked about this a week or 2 weeks ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago. We talked about the Egyptians would shave all their hair off. They didn't want anything to do with lice. They didn't want to have any, they were in the desert. It's already gritty, sandy. They didn't want it in their hair. They didn't want lice. They didn't want sand. They tried to keep themselves clean all the time. And then you have the Semitic people, the Hebrews, and they got these big old nasty beards and long hair. And so, huh?
They rode motorcycles.
And they rode motorcycles, so that makes total sense. So you can almost kind of see these guys when they're there kind of saying, okay, what do we do here how do we get Pharaoh to kind of move a little bit? Oh, so we need to go out and worship our God. 3 days journey. Now, by the way, you walk 15 to 20 miles per day. So on the website, I put kind of circles where 45 miles and 60 miles, because if it's 15 miles a day times 3 or 20 miles a day. So I kind of put circles about how far out they were saying they wanted to go. And if you look at the map, they're basically asking to get way out in the desert in the middle of nowhere. And Pharaoh's saying, you think I'm dumb? You're going to get that far away, and then you're just going to take off. Come on, guys. Come on. But I think they were trying to flex a little bit here. Because they said, we got to go do this thing because God told us to. We don't want him to come in here, because if he comes in, he's going to come in here with these lice. He's going to come in here with pestilence. Or he might come in here with a sword. We know that you don't want to get into a battle with somebody that you don't want to get beat down. Okay? Remember in Exodus chapter 1, he says here in verse 10, come, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass, when any war breaks out, they also join our enemies and fight against us. That's Exodus chapter 1. So they're saying, hey, you don't want them to come bring, this guy's going to bring some swords, and there's a whole bunch of us, and there's fewer of you, and these guys are flexing. That's right. You don't want them coming out here.
The fifth word beats on you.
So chapter 5, verse 4. But the king of Egypt said to them, why do you, Moses and Aaron, take the people from their work? Get back to your labor. Pharaoh said, look, the people of the land are numerous, and you make them rest from their labor. Go back to Exodus 1:11. Says, therefore they set taskmasters over them to afflict them with their labor. They built for Pharaoh storage cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted, the more they multiplied and grew. So that as a result, they abhorred the sons of Israel. And the Egyptians made the children of Israel serve with rigor, and they made their lives bitter with hard service, in mortar and in brick, and in all manner of service in which of the field. All the service in which they made them serve was rigor. So they're trying to push them. My conjecture was that perhaps he was just basically trying to work them so hard they wouldn't feel like having children. They'd be too tired. They'd be too tired to have kids. This is Pharaoh's Planned Parenthood approach. Okay. So he says, get back to your labor. Look, the people of the land are now numerous, and you make them rest from their labor. Because you're filling their minds with ideas. Okay? That's what he's alluding to. Pharaoh commanded the same day the taskmasters of the people and their officers, which we'll get to in a second, saying, you shall no more give the people straw to make brick as before. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. However, the quota of the bricks which they were making previously, you shall lay upon them, and you shall not diminish any of it. For they are idle. Some translations say they're lazy. But I don't think lazy is the right term, because they're working their hands off. What he is trying to imply is they got too much time on their hands. If they've got enough time to whine about going to worship a God, they got too much time on their hands. Work them harder. Give them more to do. Therefore they cry out, saying, let us go and sacrifice to our God. Let there be more work laid upon the men, so that they may labor therein, and let them not regard deceptive words. So what we have here, I'm going to erase this now. what we have here is a hierarchy, a chain of command, so to speak, right? And so we have, I'm just going to put it real big here, the Hebrews, just generically, the people group, the Hebrews. And from out of the Hebrews, there are a class that has been drafted, and they are the officers. For the Hebrews, on behalf of the Egyptian government. Then you have the taskmasters.
Were they Egyptian or they were?
They're Egyptian. So the taskmasters say, so let's pretend that we're all Hebrews. So a taskmaster, Egyptian, comes in here and says, Brad, you're one of the officers in charge of the Hebrews. You're in charge of these knuckleheads. Don't let them get away with nothing. Because if you do, your skin is mine. So then the officers then go to their group of Hebrews and like, hey guys,
what backs it up is the Brooklyn Papyrus. The Brooklyn Papyrus states, like, say the officers would come to Brad. Brad's in charge of 100 Hebrews. You're even under medical care. Like if they got bit by a viper,
yeah,
they would come to Brad.
Yes.
Brad, and then you would take them to get fixed. But you were in charge of 100 Hebrews. So
there you go.
Yeah, exactly.
That's archaeology backing up the Bible. All right, so verse 10, chapter 5, verse 10. The taskmasters of the people and the officers went out, and they spoke to the people, saying, Thus says Pharaoh, I will not give you straw. So they're saying, hear ye, right? Announcement from Pharaoh. Pharaoh says, I will not give you straw. Go get straw where you can find it. Yet nothing of your work shall be diminished. And I actually have a picture, if you go to bradflight.com/Exodus, there's a picture of a modern hayfield where the bales are there, but you can see the stubble left over from where they cut. That is going to be what he's saying. You guys go gather out those little pieces that are left sitting out there. Y'all will gather that, and then you'll make your bricks. Okay?
You know why? That was ancient rebar. You know when you see concrete,
Yes.
you got rebar?
Yes.
Well, they didn't have that then. So here's what I used to do when I first did this. Okay, I went and made a mud pie. If you don't put any straw or hay, even grass clippings, you can snap that mud pie with straw. Mm-hmm. If you make the same mud pie, then you put some bits of hay, it strengthens it. The edges will crumble, but it strengthens it like metal rebar. That's what they use the straw for. To add strength and integrity to the bricks.
That's exactly right. And I actually have pictures of that on the website for you guys. Okay. Yeah, I've got pictures of it. So that's exactly right, though. I didn't have to explain that. So you still have to make the same amount of bricks, but now, because y'all have been idle, I'm going to say you guys have got too much time on your hands. Spend that extra time that you had trying to get away from here to go worship your God. Go spend that extra time now. Go harvesting the little stubble of grass that's in the field so you can make your bricks. So he's really cramping down on their time restraints here.
Have you ever wondered who was collecting it before?
I believe, because it says he was giving it to them. So I believe it was either another sub-crew of the Hebrews, or perhaps it was some Egyptian people. Yeah. I don't know that for sure. It just says that I'm not going to give it to him anymore. So let's go to 13. The taskmasters pushed them, saying, fulfill your works, your daily tasks, just as when there was straw. So the taskmasters are the ones saying this to the officers. Then, verse 14, the officers of the children of Israel, which Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them, were beaten. So were the Hebrews extra beaten at that point? No. The taskmasters whipped the officers. And here's what they said in verse 14. They were asked and demanded, why have you not fulfilled your task in making brick, both yesterday and today, as previously, as you had before? In verse 15, the officers of the children of Israel, the officers here, came and cried to Pharaoh, saying, why do you deal this way with your servants? Like, I thought we were on your side. I know we're Hebrew, but we're the ones pushing our people. Why are you doing this to us? There is no straw being given to your servants. So this is why I'm thinking it's either a subset of the Hebrews that were doing the hay, or it was a Egyptian crew. I don't know. There's no straw being given to your servants, and they say to us, make brick. And indeed your servants are beaten, but the fault is in your own people. So they're kind of like mouthing off to Pharaoh here. And he said, you are slackers! He didn't respond real well to this. Slackers! Therefore you say, let us go and sacrifice to the Lord. Go therefore now and work. For there shall be no straw be given you, yet you shall deliver the quota of bricks. So we see they're like, oh man, Pharaoh, I can't believe you're doing this to us. Why are you doing this to us, man? And he's like, yeah, go. You can almost see him like tricking them. Like, you know what? Yeah. You know what? Go and get your lazy butts back to work. It's like verse 19. The officers of the children of Israel saw that they were in trouble. After it was said, you shall not diminish anything from your bricks of your daily task. So let me read that again. The officers of the children of Israel saw that they were in trouble. Like, this is serious. After it was said, you shall not diminish anything from your bricks of your daily task. Then they met Moses and Aaron, who stood in the way, as they came forth from Pharaoh. So we have these officers. Let's see, this is Pharaoh here. Pharaoh. So they went to go see him. On their way out, we see Aaron and Moses. Okay? So here we are in verse 20 of chapter 5. Then they met Moses and Aaron, who stood in the way as they came forth from Pharaoh. And they, the officers, said to them, to Aaron and Moses, May the Lord look on you and judge, because you have made our scent stink in the estimation of Pharaoh and in the estimation of his servants, the taskmasters, to put a sword in their hands to slay us. Basically, you've set it up where we are going to be killed by these guys. Now,
yeah, you can see them getting upset. It didn't work out the way they were promised.
hold on though. Wait a second. Whoa. Wait a second here. How could this be? Let's go on to verse 22. We're going to finish chapter 5 here. Moses returned to the Lord. He's you can see Moses almost kind of scratching his head like, what just happened here? I've made the journey from Midian all the way back here. I got my wife. She's on board now. Aaron's with me. I got the staff snake thing. I've got the Napoleon Bonaparte in my jacket thing going here. And Lord, why have you caused trouble for all the people? Why is it you even sent me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he's done evil to these people, and neither have you delivered your people at all. So we feel like we've just made this worse for everybody. What in the world's going on? Wasn't supposed to be like this. Now hold on. I want you to flip back to chapter 4, verse 31. Chapter 4, verse 31. I mean, literally 2 days, 3 days, 2 days before, Moses and Aaron met with the elders. And what does it say in verse 31, Robbie?
And they believed. When they heard that the Lord was concerned about them and had seen their misery, they bowed down and worshiped.
Things were awesome because we see God working in our lives. And he is telling us that we are going to get out of here. We believe. Yes, we believe. But then things get hard.
They didn't answer in the way they got an answer the way they thought.
Things get hard.
Yeah.
Things get tough. Takes us into a place of discomfort. Makes it harder for us to align with God than it does to align with Pharaoh. And we're suffering. And I don't know, is it really worth it is it really worth it? Let's just, I mean, it's not like things are amazing, but at least they're giving us the straw to make these bricks. I mean, this is brutal that we've got to go out to the fields and basically start pulling stumps of grass up to make
Yeah,
this.
things got worse.
I don't know if this, I know we said we believed 2 or 3 days ago, but I'm not so sure about this.
Well, why did Jesus have to go through everything he endured so he could show his glory later?
That's right. And I also think this chapter 4 and 5 of Exodus is a picture of us.
Well, again, things don't happen as quick like we want them to.
That's right. We have to work. We got bills to pay. We get in a car accident, speeding ticket. Somebody gets sick, roll an ankle. I'm laid up. I can't get the hours I need to work. Things get tough. Like, God, I thought you were. Here I was going to church, and I was sometimes opening your book, and I was trying to be this, this Christian person, but things are no better than they were.
I think the challenges for a reason.
To be tested.
Because we know that we can go to chapters 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, which we're going to do the next 2 weeks. And we see God whip some butt. But in that moment, they didn't see that. They didn't see.
Well, humans, like psychology, we're in the now.
Yeah.
That's how most people live. It starts like that as infants.
Mm-hmm.
Think how selfish infants are. Mine.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we get older, we can control that. But in our minds,
Maybe.
some can. But we're still the same way right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like I was with somebody, all that she ever cared about was the weekend. What are we doing this weekend?
Mm-hmm.
Then the next weekend, what are we doing this weekend?
Mm-hmm.
It was like, man, we're some substance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like these Hebrews, they're in the now.
Yep.
Studying military history, because I was a military historian before I got, the love for this. I can see this same scenario play out. God hardening generals' hearts to be defeated.
Mm.
Japan has never been defeated in its entire history. And God played the same role here with the emperor.
Mm-hmm.
By hardening his heart. And look, for the first time, we gave them scenario, like almost the Moses situation. You know what? If you don't surrender, we're going to drop a bomb on you.
Yeah.
They wouldn't do it.
They were dropping fire bombs. They were burning cities. They were
killing the soldiers, the U.S. soldiers. What they did to us at the Bataan Death March in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
They worked our soldiers to death with malaria until they just dropped like flies.
Yep.
And it was almost the same scenario. Because we gave them several scenarios and situations to get out, and we finally had to drop a bomb on them.
Mm-hmm.
First time in history they had to surrender. So God hardens hearts.
Yeah.
All through history.
And we talked about hardening the heart being that it's bowing up to like flexing. I'm mixing my muscles. I'm flexing. I'm fighting against God. So let's talk about this for a second. We see in chapter 4 God trying to work in our lives, and he gives us a means of covenant. It requires blood. And part of that covenant with the Hebrews was to have circumcision. And there's going to be some blood from that. And we see here that God is going to kill somebody who's trying to do the right thing, but is not being in full covenant with him. He's going to kill him. We're looking at chapter 4, verse 24. A lodging place on the way, the Lord met Moses and sought to kill him because his son was not circumcised yet. God is not concerned about us doing things for him. He's concerned about obedience to him. And the obedience is what shows the covenant between us and him. And in my opinion, a Christophany, or a theophany, if you want to call it, but I think a Christophany here, this innocent son of Moses and Zipporah, he had his blood shed to save Moses' life as part of the covenant that God outlined. He didn't promise that there wasn't going to be collateral damage. He didn't promise that there wasn't going to be issues. He didn't promise that it was going to be perfect. He told them what was going to happen. He said, Israel's my firstborn son. And tell Pharaoh to let my people go. And if they don't, then I'm going to kill his firstborn son. He's already outlined what's going to happen. We looked last week in chapter 3. It says go and tell him, and if he doesn't do that, I'm going to gather the elders together, which he did. I'll bring them up the affliction of the land of Egypt to the land flowing with milk and honey. They shall listen to your voice, and you shall come back to this mountain to worship with us. Ask if you can go 3 days. Like he's giving them all this stuff, right? He's giving them all the stuff that's happening. So, and Moses is following through with this. And he even says over here in chapter 4, he says, even go and tell the Pharaoh that these people are like my firstborn son, and you let him go. And if he doesn't do it, I'm going to kill his firstborn son. I mean, we could close the book. We know what's going to happen. That's the foreshadowing. That's the Cliff's Notes version of the rest of what's happening in this book. At least up until chapter 19, basically. But he never said it's not going to have issues. He never said that he's going to make it perfectly smooth for us. I think sometimes we want it. Like those people in chapter 4, verse 31. Chapter 4, verse 31. And they believed. Right? That's awesome. They came to a place of faith in God. But things get tough, and what did they do? Chapter 5, verse 21. And they said to Aaron and Moses, may the Lord look on you and judge, because you have made our sin stink in the estimation of Pharaoh and in the estimation of his servants, to put a sword in their hand to kill us. We're like that too, aren't we? Huh? Yeah. I didn't get my way. Well, you know what? Yeah, you deserve to get cut off in traffic, or that's a lot of people talk about karma. This thing of you do nice things happen to you. You do bad things happen to you. I don't believe in karma, but I do think that vengeance is mine, says the Lord. And from what I read and hear, I see a people who are like, yes, we've been crying, we've been praying, we didn't even know his name. His name, what was it? Yahweh? Oh, that's how we say that? Okay, wow. There's this guy, and you did the staff, and it was a snake, and yeah, and you did the whole Napoleon. Man, yeah, we worship you right now, God. Except for things are a little tough now, so yeah, you can leave that stuff alone. How fickle are humans? We are so fickle. But God is not done yet. We see here, he is not done. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to go through a bunch of chapters next week, because we're going to go through the plagues. And we're going to basically read through them real fast, and then I have some studies on the plagues themselves. We're going to do that next week. So we're going to cover a bunch of chapters together. And it may spill over into, to 2 weeks or a week and a half or whatever. But we'll cover them in depth. But God's not done. His timing is perfect. And his ways are his ways. They're not our ways. I want to become a believer, and I want it to just smooth sailing. But that's not what he promised. He promised he would get us out of Egypt. He didn't say, I'm going to show up and then make it all easy. He just said, he said the end result's going to be there. So, thanks for
Yeah, me too, man.
looking at this with me this week, and we'll see you next week.